yeah, feel free to put your cameras on or off. It's completely up to yourself, as we said. We're going to be recording the session. It will probably still be recording when we go into the question and answer session, but just to let you know, it will be edited. So even although it's recording, please feel free to be open as you like, and anything that you want to contribute, that's absolutely fine. As Mark said as well, if you've got any comments throughout, please feel free to put them in the chat. So, hi. So we'd like to welcome you to our workshop. I'm Sarah Anderson. I'm a fourth-year student social worker. I sit on both SASW and BASW committee, and I'm part of the Experts by Experience committee, which aims to make sure that lived experience and disabled voices are heard at all stages of SASW and BASW's work. So just for people that don't know me, I do know a few of you in here. So I'm joined by Laura Finnan-Cowan from Social Work Scotland and Mark Hand-Johnson from SDS Scotland. So I hope you've all had a really good morning. If you've been able to be there this morning, you'll spot the points in this discussion where I certainly took a lot from this morning. And I think the debate that we had as well was really important. So as I said, we're going to record it, but we will edit it. So please don't feel that you can't contribute, because we absolutely would love to hear your voices through it. We've got several aims for the workshop, and really hope that you'll feel more comfortable using self-direct support, or at least know where to go for further advice and guidance. We hope that you'll leave with an increased knowledge, including the ways that SDS can help social workers in our roles, an update on work happening with SDS, some of the ways that SDS can be used to change lives, and hopefully know that, most importantly, it doesn't have to be as scary as it can seem. So during the workshop, we'll mention the self-direct support standards, and we'll discuss these fuller at the end. Laura, you can change now. So self-direct support itself originates from the independent living movement, highlighted with the slogan, "Nothing about us without us." Major campaigning started in the 1970s, though arguably far before then, with disabled people fighting to have the right to be included and involved in decisions which impacted them. As I said at the first workshop, I'm saying them, but it's actually us because I'm disabled also. Prior to this, it wasn't unusual for people to be placed in asylums simply for being disabled and having almost no say in how they lived their lives. So we've gone great strides to achieve the goals from the campaign. However, we haven't met them all, and often disabled people still aren't fully included in their own care. Self-direct support aims to empower disabled people with choice, control, freedom and equality, with the key belief that disabled people deserve to have as full a life as those without. There have been setbacks recently, including the cost of living crisis, which I'm sure we're all very aware of, meaning that PAs are often having to leave their jobs to take better paid positions. Many councils are running on critical criteria, meaning the eligibility is often complicated and difficult for budgets, and political issues are causing the number of people looking to be employed to be reduced. Coupled with the setbacks of self-direct support, it's still not arguably used to its full potential. So we hope that this workshop will help to highlight not only the importance of self-direct support, but how to use it for maximum impact. Mark's now going to take us through the legally mandated duties and powers of self-direct support.
Thank you, Sarah. That's great. So my name's Mark Hand-Johnston. I work for an organisation called Self-Directed Support Scotland. We're a third sector organisation that is a national partner funded to support the implementation of SDS. We're also a membership organisation, so we work with our member organisations, and we have members based in every local authority area in Scotland. A lot of our members are primarily delivering independent information and support around SDS. Just want to follow on from Sarah's reference to the independent living movement. And one of the things in terms of maybe having an understanding of what the SDS legislation is trying to achieve is around this central concept of independent living. And this is really about trying to enable people to have the same rights and choices as other people and the use of the resources that are available to them. So legislation is very much a rights-based approach. And people have certain responsibilities within the legislation, people such as social workers who are duty bearers under the Act. And you'll see that the definition is fairly long. It's unique to Scotland. It isn't replicated elsewhere in the UK. So independent living, this idea that people of whatever age have the same freedom, choice, dignity and control as other citizens, whether that be at home or work or in the community. And so it means having the rights to the practical assistance and support to enable people to participate in society and live an ordinary life. And when you sort of hear that description, that sounds a little bit different from just trying to ensure people receive care and support. This is the aim and expectation of self-directed support, what we're trying to achieve with people. Just to add a little bit further to that, I suppose it's maybe just helpful to clarify that really self-directed support is for everybody who needs social care services of support. So it's regardless of your age, whether you're a child or a young person or adult or older person, or whether you are an unpaid carer. There are certain rights that come along for unpaid carers as well. So that's great. Thanks, Laura. I just want to maybe just highlight some kind of key legal duties, things you might already be aware of, but I think it's maybe just worth just reinforcing, just having a little look at again. Under the SDS legislation and statutory guidance, there's very clear reference to underlying statutory principles, and those principles apply to any aspect of the delivery and arrangement and provision of support to people, whether that be identifying people's needs, whether that be allocating resources, whether that be support planning, whether that be reviewing, whatever that might be. So these need to inform all practice around delivering self-directed support. And these principles are things like involvement, so that people can have as much involvement in the discussions about their life and their needs as they would like to have, and to be provided with the support to enable them to do that. That people can exercise informed choice, so they're given enough information to be able to actually exercise choice in practice. That information might have to be tailored so that they understand that better, and also that information might have to be relevant to their personal circumstances. Another one around collaboration. So public authorities like local authorities and the NHS and health and social care partnerships need to work in partnership, in collaboration with people looking to receive support. It's a partnership arrangement. It's not an imposition. And the last one around dignity and participation. So people's dignity should be respected at every stage. People may need additional support to ensure that their particular need around dignity and participation can be provided in practice. And I think one of the things that maybe people are probably very well aware of is the 4 options under self-directed support. And sometimes people think of SDS in terms of those 4 options. And I'll go on to explain them a little bit more in the next slide. But one of the things to be aware of is that once somebody is eligible for self-directed support and for that funding, that they have a right to know what those 4 options are, how they relate to their particular circumstances, and what that means for them. And particularly around things like option 1, where people might be taking a direct payment and managing money, they need to know what the responsibilities that come along with that as well. Another kind of duty which is quite important to be aware of is the need to signpost people to other forms of information and support. And that could be even before people have had a formal assessment, at an early stage where people, there's potential services or available that might be relevant to people, is to signpost people to them. And one thing, if I was maybe going to ask people to think about doing one thing after today's workshop, is to maybe just check what your local independent SDS information support organisation is in your area. Nearly every local authority area has an independent service funded by Scottish Government. We have a find help search function on our website. You can find the details of the one that's local to you, but it would be really useful to probably connect with them, even to get onto a mailing list, so you understand what their work is. You might be referring people to them, connecting people with their services and support. It might be an advocacy organisation that can support people in terms of understanding their rights and being able to express their views. Or it might be a brokerage organisation or a broker who's able to connect people with opportunities in the community. In terms of other sort of key legal duties, there certainly are some related to unpaid carers in terms of the Carers Scotland Act. One is around carer identification. If you come across somebody who's in an unpaid caring role, then actually there's a duty to inform people that they are an unpaid carer, and that means that they potentially have the opportunity to start looking at their needs as a carer. And the way that people often do that is through having the opportunity to put together an adult carer support plan or young carers statement. So unpaid carers have a right to these. They're often produced in partnership with local carer centres. And if somebody as an unpaid carer meets local eligibility criteria, they potentially could be offered an SDS budget as well to pay for things that support their health, their well-being and their caring role. Thanks, Sarah. Well, thanks, Laura. I just wanted to highlight a little bit, just for anybody, just as maybe a reminder, these 4 SDS options. And sometimes, as I say, people maybe think about SDS in these terms, but in many ways, the options are around how the money gets from your local authority or health and social care partnership to pay for the support that people might need. Option 1, I've mentioned around direct payments. A payment of money made from the local authority to an individual, to a bank account or through a prepayment card. That might allow people to choose how to use those resources. Option 1 is the only option under which people can actually employ their own personal assistants. So that's maybe useful to be aware of. But of course, receiving the money and looking after that and managing that comes with more responsibility. And that's quite important to be aware of that. But there's also additional support available. There's often, in terms of independent support organisations, payroll services, there's often a number of support available to people at a local level. Option 2, which was the innovative option that came with the SDS legislation, people might not want to hold the money. They might not want to touch that, want to have that responsibility. They're a little bit worried about that. They can choose an organisation to hold that money for them, and for that organisation to work with them in partnership to help work out what support they might need, how they can put that support in place, making sure that support works for them, being able to change that support as they need to, put together support plans, identify personal outcomes. So there's a partnership arrangement between that option 2 provider and the individual person needing support. And there's often a contract in place between them as well. So that's about increasing that support that's available to people to make the support work for them in the right way. Option 3 is probably what we would see as a more kind of a traditional approach to providing support. The local authority identifies a service they think is useful for someone, is going to meet a person's needs. That person says, that's great, I like the look of that service, I'll use that. And the local authority pay the money, people don't have to worry about that. And the 4th option is really then just a mix and match of those previous 3 options to maximise the flexibility and the choice and control that people have. And it might just be worth thinking, actually, once people choose an option, it's not chosen for life. You don't have to stick with that forever. Actually, something might change. You might decide that how it's working for you isn't right. You want to review things, you want to change your option. And people should be able to do that whenever they need to. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Laura.
So thanks, Mark. The following 2 slides that we're going to talk through, they give the similar information, but they do it in different ways. So they're looking at the different components involved with self-direct support. It's really important to know that in both of the diagrams, the supported person or potentially the carer is the heart of the diagram. However, the components, although it's shown here that they're sort of floating around about outside of the person, but in reality that shouldn't be the case. They should intersect and they shouldn't be distinct from the individual. The two slides are really to help show a typical journey for someone going through the process. However, it's really important to keep in mind that the pathway, although it can be a cycle, can pause and restart at different stages depending on the needs of the individual. It typically also will happen during the review stages. It's also really important to note that the pathway happens regardless of age, as Mark has mentioned, and stage of individual, and will typically happen again during transition if an individual's got a longer term requirement and they're moving from children and family services to adult services. Early planning transition for self-directed support under Standard 10 is really valuable. It helps remove fears and worries during the transition stage. It's also worth mentioning that if the individual has got power of attorney or guardianship, that these people should be involved right from the beginning if possible. We have found that quite often somebody will get to the point where they're actually agreeing the plan and the support's almost getting put in place, simply to find that the person themselves has actually got a power of attorney or guardian, and it's almost actually making the process start from scratch. So if possible, make sure that you find out whether the power of attorney or guardianship is involved, and have those discussions as early as you can. Laura, if you can pop onto the next slide. So I find this slide like a little bit more simple to look after, but again, the individual's in the middle, but these components don't happen distinctly from the individual. They happen crossing with the individual and absolutely interacting. So typically a need for support will happen, it will be recognised by an individual or somebody close to them, and they will probably contact social work or another service like a GP. We'd suggest where possible having links with brokerage and advocacy could enable for pre-assessment work to take place before the actual assessment process happens. During this stage, it can be for the person to say what's important for them, to discuss their longer term goals or even their shorter term goals, and actually do that work before you go to assessment point. This is listed under self-directed support standards 1 and 2. From the assessment process itself, a care plan is developed not only to take into account risks, but also to look at the individual's wishes and goals. Strengths-based processes are really important here, and systems outlooks can look to bring it in community services, third sector services, which could assist with individuals. Risk enablement is also key here. It's part of self-directed support standard 6. That basically means that we're adding infantilising people. During the stage, it's really key to discuss the 4 options, as Mark has said, under self-directed support, and potentially actually bring in services, including payroll companies, so that the individual just really isn't actually picking an option that might not be the best for them, simply because they might need extra help. I'll talk about that during my own journey for self-directed support later, because I hope that sort of helps highlight that a bit more. It's vital to know also that if a person isn't eligible for a financial budget, that signposting to community services can also support the individual to look at options which could make positive change for them. So looking at things like carer centres or third sector community centres, using links with brokerage services. Also suggests that having links with advocacy and brokerage and other services, including carer centres, can potentially actually stop a person from entering crisis and potentially reduce social work budgets. So good relationships not only with the individual, but also with services around about the community can really be incredibly worthwhile. And it's actually mentioned under the self-directed support standard 1. As I hope I've highlighted here, relationship-based practice is really key to self-directed support, and it opens up options for the supported person. So having links, for example, as I've said, to payroll providers allows for individuals to actually really pick the option that might work best for them. So Laura, if you change the slide. Have a lovely 2 pictures of myself. So the image on the left is me at the start of self-directed support. That's me attempting to smile because I was miserable then, as I will explain. And the second picture was taken yesterday. The only thing that I really recognise about myself between the two pictures is the fact that I've got colourful hair. Nothing else about me is how I recognise myself now. So we thought it would be useful to share my own personal experience of using self-direct support to hopefully emphasise why we are so passionate about its possibilities. I could talk about self-direct support till the cows come home because I know the difference it's made for me, and I know the difference it's made for other people. So prior to self-direct support, my life was really limited. I was using carers from a local agency to provide my personal care. However, that wasn't through my own choice, nor did I have control over who provided my care or how it took place. As I said, I was a university student, still am in fourth year now, and I often had to miss class starting because my carers would arrive during the class. Thankfully, I had really good support from my classmates in university, so it didn't have as detrimental impact on my education as it could have. Though it certainly had a negative impact on my self-esteem and self-image. And I actually wasn't joking when I said I was miserable there. Like, I really wasn't happy. I didn't see myself as being a unique individual. My social needs weren't being met, and my life revolved around a laptop in my front room and a daily shower. Prior to this point, all I really wanted was to have a shower every day, as I wasn't physically able to shower myself. So a shower is really small change, but for me it was an improvement. I had to rely on family members to take me out for a drive for a change of scenery, and my mental health was incredibly low as I had no choice or control, coupled with really, really major power imbalance, because when I complained to the care company that they were coming while I was in class, I was told, well, you live in a rural area, so take it or leave it. There was no choice. I had no life at night because my carers would come around 7 o'clock to put me to bed, so I couldn't even call my friends. They couldn't visit also because when this was happening, it was during COVID, and I was highly clinically vulnerable. I first heard of self-direct support via the SASW monthly student group when an individual who was involved with brokerage attended. We were discussing the topic of self-direct support, and I opened up and shared that the strengths-based life that she was describing absolutely was not how I was seeing things myself. Through further discussions, I found out more about self-direct support, and I used a broker to investigate choices which I had. Using advocacy and brokerage support, I moved on to option one, which allowed me to employ my own personal assistants and to help with my personal support, which best suited myself. So before class and after 7 o'clock at night. Further, self-direct support allowed me greater control over my social needs and granted me the power to make choices and decisions which best promoted my own wishes. Using option one was really scary for me at first. I say this all the time, but I'm really, really not good at maths. And I thought I couldn't use option one. But the broker introduced me to payroll, and the payroll person basically said, all you need to do is fill out one timesheet for a personal assistant every month and we do the rest. So I don't have to worry about things like taxes or holiday pay, which would have prevented me using option one. Through using self-direct support, I no longer feel objectified and I've taken back control of my life. For people that were at the morning session, there was a topic about, do we do things to people or do we do things with people? I absolutely had things done to me. I didn't have things done with me until I used self-direct support. And I cannot begin to tell you the change that that makes for a person. I was able to volunteer as a community counsellor. I've regained hobbies, including attending the cinema and gigs. And as we spoke about earlier, I'm very involved with ice hockey. So I've been able to get back to ice hockey, and I'm actually very likely about to be joining a local snow sports society, because I very much believe that self-direct support has allowed me to see what I can do and not what I can't. I've built up a good relationship with my peers, and I'm able to control my own care to meet my needs rather than having it dictated to me as a take it or leave it approach. So I hope I've shown that self-directed support's been truly life-changing for myself. So I'm incredibly passionate about it, and I feel that it's vital as practitioners that we not only understand it, but we've got the courage to challenge where people's rights are being removed. I do have my own wishes to self-directed support, and actually hearing the discussion that took place about the National Social Work Agency this morning, I do have hope that what I would like to see happen will happen. So the first are for university courses to ensure that lived experience is included in teaching. I think SDS is incredibly powerful, but I don't think that students and practitioners have got a full understanding, as my teaching certainly was incredibly limited. And I joke about this all the time, but it's true. I learned more about 17th century workhouses than I did about SDS during my time at university. I think the new initiative that's happening in my own local area of micro enterprises, where people are able to come together to offer services in a flexible way, has got really good potential. But I'm concerned it's already been having barriers put in place. So that's potentially actually going to stop people from offering the services. So where we're actually thinking about like widening availability, I'm really concerned that that's actually not going to do a thing to help. I think it's vital that self-directed support is flexible to meet changing needs of individuals. So as I mentioned, when I first started using self-directed support, all I wanted was a shower. That's all I wanted. It's all I saw that my life could give me, because I was broken in a lot of different ways. I now know that that's not the case. However, when my goal of having a shower every day was met, self-directed support wasn't as flexible as it could have been. So we had to go back to actually going through the assessment process again and making it actually, instead of liberating myself and supporting myself, which is shown under standard 3, it became a really rigid process. I also hope that social workers will be able to practice radically and autonomously, as suggested by standard number 8, using all the skills that we have, including person-centred care, to cut through bureaucracy and paperwork. Self-directed support was difficult for myself at several stages, but it wasn't because of my social worker skills. It was because we had to stick to the process, which, as I've said, was overly complicated and overly rigid. So if you were in the discussion earlier today, I'm going to borrow a phrase that Katrina O'Sullivan used, which was, "My social worker moved the rubble from the flowers to allow me to grow." So my social worker removed all of the bureaucracy and basically let me flourish. And I think that's really, really powerful, and I think we need to do more of it. When my needs were advancing and my goals became more due to previously met needs being met, my social worker would have to argue for different components of my budget. I say the fact that I've advanced so well is nothing but an amazing example of the ways that self-directed support works. But the fact that we have to keep returning to process and paperwork and bureaucracy detracts from time which could be spent elsewhere if plans are allowed to be flexible and reflective. The relationship-based practice my own social worker had allowed us to work together during the process instead of pulling at two sides. He explained the situation to me, and we were able to work together to suggest creative ways to meet my goals. Often I feel that social workers are being unfairly criticised for having criteria to meet. However, the relationship-based practice skills, we're able to remove some of that and actually meet goals even although we're working through a very rigid process. If social workers are able to remove bureaucracy and paperwork for the sake of paperwork, not only would it remove our workloads and reduce our workloads, but we could go back to doing what I think we, and I hope, I'm pretty sure we all do, which is working with individuals to make and support positive change. So my last wish is that we recognise the great work that PAs do. I have grown through my PAs being involved so much, but we don't pay them for their work. We don't pay them for their efforts. Disabled people are losing our supports not only because our PAs disabled people are losing our supports not because our PAs want to leave us, but because they can't afford to stay. If we're serious about supporting disabled people, we need to recognise that we need to treat PAs and carers as amazing people that they are and pay them accordingly. So thanks for listening to me. Laura is now going to talk us through the toolkit and direct payment agreement, and then we're going to take some questions. Just to remind you as well that we'll continue to record this, but this bit will be edited, so hopefully you'll be able to speak freely. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and good afternoon, everybody. My name's Laura Finnan-Cowan, and I'm one of the SDS project officers on Social Work Scotland's SDS team. And I thought I would just share a wee flavour of some of the work that we are doing that Sarah thought would be interesting to SASW members. So just to give you a wee sense of the work that we are doing at the moment, the first example is our SDS practitioner toolkit, which is very much in development at the moment. We are pretty much developed all the content and working with a publisher, a graphic designer, to have it published. There's a wee picture of what it might look like in the front cover. It's not going to look exactly like that, but it'll be similar to that. And just to say that the toolkit came from a piece of work around information resources around SDS. We know the information that's quite often one of the main things that's said is that, oh, there's not enough information around, and actually that's not true. There are a huge amount of SDS resources, and in fact there is actually an SDS library of information resources on the Care Inspectorate Hub. After today, we'll make sure that a handout is sent to you. We've created a handout with what we think we're hopeful will be lots and lots of important resources for you to access after today if you don't know about them already. And one of them will be the library on the Care Inspectorate Hub. And we were doing some work on there just to explore which resources were really good, which ones needed to be removed because they were a bit out of date. And it became really clear that there was no fast, easy way for frontline practitioners and other people to access some of the most relevant bits of SDS information and guidance very quickly, very easily, but also that there was some gaps in this information. So creating the toolkit was just a response to that, a sort of opportunity to bring together some of the key documents that you might want to have at hand and access to in your practice, but also fill in some of the information gaps for people with sensory loss, people with mental health conditions, carers, and also people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities. So as I say, we're working on that just now. We don't have a exact completion date, but we hope that we'll be able to share the published and complete practitioner toolkit sometime early in the new year. However, if you would like to be specifically notified when the toolkit is available and sent a link to that, please contact our SDS team email address. You can see that on screen there. We would absolutely encourage folk to get in touch if you would like to be added to that sort of mailing list to help distribution, because we really hope that this will be a tool that will be useful for the day-to-day. And then just moving on, I'd just like to say a little bit about a second piece of work that's ongoing this year in our project. I think folks will have a sense that direct payments are not always necessarily easy to administer. We've heard that social workers don't always have enough information or confidence around good conversations about direct payments, or thinking, oh, I need to support this person or this family through setting up a direct payment. We also know there's huge variation across the country about the different elements that are paid for as part of a direct payment. We've got the sense that it's a cheaper option because there's not the same amount of overheads. However, on the other hand, we know not all PA employers are able to provide sort of consistent levels of training and consistent levels of having that, that consistency, what's the word? Another word that begins with those letters. Sarah, help me out. The money that you keep in the background that you're looking to build up.
Contingency.
Contingency, that's the one, thank you. Went completely out my head. Yeah, we know that some folk don't get to keep much of a contingency so that they don't have a backup plan. And they don't necessarily have enough money in their budget for training. So this piece of work is all about trying to work out what are all the important elements that need to be included in a direct payment, like contingency, like training, like all the aspects that need to be covered in terms of employment law. What are all the additional things? And the whole purpose about this is about making sure that PA employers get enough in their direct payment to have a really good relationship with their PAs, so that we don't have that situation that Sarah has been beginning to describe to us about, where actually PAs don't feel they can stay in their role, or because they're not remunerated for their job, and also because they're not getting the development opportunities that they need to do their job. So this piece of work is really about bringing lots of different stakeholders together to say, if we were going to create a national direct payment agreement, what are all the elements that need to be included? What is all of the factors that local authorities need to fund a direct payment employer to include? So just flagging this up, because we would absolutely really value the frontline social work perspective on this. We've got lots and lots of stakeholders involved at the moment, but not enough frontline social workers. We are at the we've heard lots of opinions and done lots of research, but we need to start putting this agreement together, and we really need the perspective of frontline social workers to tell us from their perspective what needs to be included. So again, the email address is there. Please do get in touch if you would be interested in contributing your knowledge and your experience into this process. Everything that we do needs to be built alongside all the various partners, and social work are very important in that. And then just quickly moving on, just to a third area of our work that we are currently very much in the midst of. You'll have heard Sarah refer to the social work standards throughout her presentation, and we do indeed have currently 12 SGS standards, which were published in 2021. They were really our first co-productive attempt at pulling together what does good SDS look like. We didn't really have that defined anywhere before, so at that time we thought it was really important to do that. So as it says there, huge range of stakeholders were involved in doing that initial work, and really the standards, they're for the local authorities to look at, to use, to consider implementation and practice around SDS. And so the bit that's going on just now really is a review of the standards, and the reason we wanted to review them was just to, I suppose, to make sure, to reinforce the things that have already been said today about SDS being for everyone who requires social care, regardless of age, regardless necessarily of condition. There's lots of, I guess, misconceptions out there about who it's for and who it's not. So we want to make sure that we've got standards that are being really clear and very explicitly inclusive, where we've maybe not been so far. So although you can see a wee link at the bottom there for the standards and how they look just now, and please feel free to go and have a look at them. Yeah, come March 2024, we'll be taking a slightly revised version, hopefully just expanding on more inclusive language and I guess starting to suggest practice guidance, moving towards suggesting practice guidance further on in the year. So we'll have those revised standards go to COSLA and Scottish Government for sign off, and then they'll be available in the sort of mid to second half of the year. So don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you very much for your attention. We know that you will have lots and lots of questions and considerations, observations you'd like to make, so we want to use the rest of the time for that. So would be great to hear, we would invite your questions now, but also we would love to hear from you about what you believe would help you to deliver your role in self-directed support. So I'll just stop sharing the screen and we can see each other and have a good conversation.